we have our ForgeBox module of the week. And so this is something that me and Scott started. And I think we've got a lot of stuff to add to it, but we've made some pretty good progress right away. And we had some fun playing code golf and refactoring and doing all sorts of cool stuff with it. But it is testboxUtils. So you want to tell us a little bit about it, Scott?
Yeah, so I mean, most of the ideas came from your notepad, but we had talked about it a while because we want to do testing right, but we don't want to spend a ton of time writing boilerplate. And so we came up with a utility package that you can add on to TestBox that will give you some matchers that make sense for working with APIs. Because we commonly have to deal with checking for 200 responses or 404 responses or 400 responses, authentication issues. And we don't want to have to write the messages and all the rest of those things over and over again, but we want to make sure that the matchers explain themselves well.
That's a big key that I don't think people get.
And so we've got API status codes, events that are coming, collection length, struct key length, and there's quite a few more that will be added to this as we get through adding them. But we've also set it up in a way to where it's really flexible in how you can add these additional utility tests to your test box. And you don't have to add all of them. You can add just the ones for the API or just the ones for the collections or structs. So it makes it really nice to work with and not a ton of overhead when it comes to adding time to running your test or testing framework.
Yep. So obviously I'm still working on getting the docs. I think we're going to change to use DocBox to generate these automatically for us. But there's just some examples here on the screen. So, before you'd have to do expect and you'd get your event, and then you do get response or get collection and then look for the response in the collection. And then you get that, you'd look at the status code and then you'd see, you have the status code to be a number and it would say expect 200 to be 401. And you're like, that doesn't tell me anything. But now you can say expect an event or a response to have a status code of a number, and then it'll tell you a more friendly user message, like expected the status code for this, this call to be 200 and you received a 401. And so those messages are way more friendly. But then shortcuts like to be 200, to be 401, to be 400, to be 401, to be 403, to be 404. Short and sweet, but they have the same power. And then for me, working with JavaScript, I hated the fact that we didn't have expect a struct to have a key with case, because all the key checks were great, except for JavaScript, the case is wrong. It doesn't really help me. So this is one that I think Eric Peterson actually wrote a while back, and we would copy and paste it from project to project. Now custom matches, and we need to have an easy way to include this. And TestBox right now doesn't have Wirebox. It doesn't have modules. And those are on the list that, Luis is working on. We're going to be adding them sometime soon. So this is, a way for us to, basically make those available. And I think it's kind of cool. Like if you look at the homepage, I haven't added all the issues yet because I actually have a bunch of ideas for it. But just to show you guys what we kind of did. So in the models folder, right now, we are changing some of this to make it a little more flexible. We're going to add some Wirebox goodness into it too. But like you have this all. So if you inject all, it will get all the matches for everything below you using some crazy path stuff. If you just want the API one, like Scott said, you can get all the API ones by just including the APIs, and it gets everything below itself. If you just want the API response matches, you can just call this. And so there's some of the code for that. But so we're trying to make it where it's piecemeal. So if you do the API status codes here, you'll just get status code stuff. And if you notice here, like all that's in here is a prefix and everything else lives in the base model. So at first we had like all this code everywhere, and Scott was like, whoa, what if we can do this? Maybe we can add it in here. And so this base model, we abstracted all the logic that was shared up to this. And, again, we don't even have our Java docs in here yet, but long story short, there's a lot of cool stuff in it and we're just getting started. So, again, we've got matches and helpers. So you can get little functions that you can use And then like under the API response helper. So this will actually get an API response. So if you pass it an event or JSON or whatever, it'll try to figure out like here it's saying, is it a struct? So if it's an event, it'll be a struct. And if it actually has a key called get rendered content, and that key is a custom function, then we're probably got an event. So we're going to say event dot, get rendered content. And then if it's JSON, we can deserialize it and return it. And so that's how we get the response. So this little bit of code here will do that. And so if you guys come to my webinar, you'll see how I took like 8 lines of code and made it 1 line of code in my tests, and it does everything I needed to do. Anyways, long story short, it's awesome. Scott and I had fun putting it together, and we got a huge list of things we want to add to it. And then you guys probably have a bunch of little custom helpers you've made, little custom matches. We want everyone to sort of, work together and make it better, make our lives easier, better. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of cool stuff. And then, if we can automate the documentation piece to be of the functions, that's going to be cool, because right now I was updating the README. I'm like, it's really annoying to update the README. I just want to be able to push a button when I build it, just do it. So we're working on that right now. And then that might require a couple little changes to it as far as how the matches and helpers are built in there. So we have the CFM, so you can just do a CF include if you wanted to, but the CFCs read the include. So we try to make it very flexible so you can use it for legacy or anything. But yeah, I'm excited. So
well, feel free to add issues if you can think of other matchers that you want to have in there.
Yeah.
Or make your own PRs. That too. But.
Yep. And I definitely want to go in there and throw in a bunch of the ones I have for ideas. That way, hopefully it'll, give people some good ideas. So yeah, so I think it'll be cool. And again, I showed Louise and everybody else, and I was like, because we don't have this yet, hint, this is the way I did it. So, eventually we'll have Wirebox, and then we'll be able to have modules, and we'll have like metadata on the CFC that says it's a matcher CFC, and then it'll using the annotation just automatically be available. That's what I want, but we'll get there. So anyway, so that's our ForgeBox module of the week. Help make it better, and come check it out a little bit more on Friday at the webinar. That was our ForgeBox module of the week, brought to you by Modernize or Die Podcast, CFML News Edition, proudly sponsored by Order Solutions. You can see the new episodes every week on cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io or on the Order Solutions YouTube channel.